This is how the most optimal science-based lifter Miss Kasti Gupta squat.
ये दोगला आदमी है, हम इसकी बात पर भरोसा नहीं कर सकते।
No wonder he boldly preaches the bland hypothetical statement, barbell back squats are not optimal. I don't have the sagittal view of this video, but considering the frontal plane view, this looks like a sumo barbell back squat. His hips are extremely externally rotated, which offloads the tension of the quads and shifts it to the adductors and the glutes. His squat technique is absolute BS for developing massive quads, but this technique can grow bulbous adductors and glutes, which he clearly lacks. When Kashish Gupta says that barbell squats ain't optimal, he literally means that he sucks at squatting. He preaches the concept of training in the available range of motion, but he ends up recruiting a lot of butt wink, aka posterior tipping of the pelvis, which drives a lot of tension into the spinal erectors and the QLs. When you're squatting ATG, you might have noticed a lot of tension in your spinal erectors and a lot of tension in your goddamn QL. I hope I'm visible. I basically meant that when you're squatting ATG like this. This is your, maybe parallel squats, then you go down, 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 and you round your frickin' pelvis, and there is a lot of tension in your spinal erectors and a lot of tension in your QLs. People who constantly squat ATG and develop back issues, now you know why. This technique is not necessarily bad if you are a powerlifter or if you are an Olympic lifter, because you're supposed to squat ATG. But this squatting technique of Kashish Gupta, which is basically a sumo squat, and is trying to go into the deeper ranges of motion, driving a lot of posterior pelvic tilt. This technique is absolute BS, but considering the fact that Miss Kasti Gupta is an optimal science-based gym guru who pinpoints everyone's flaws and tries to expose them, basically what I feel is that this moron is a freaking biomechanical joker that is all talk, and his exercise techniques is absolute bullshit. The squat rack in my gym is broken, but there is an old rusted pendulum squat machine. I have done 200 kilos for 7 reps, but until I ran into knee issues. The first reason being adding weights too soon. But I had to rectify my technique by incorporating my PRI knowledge. So I did some changes. I was squatting to a depth that does not cause butt wink. I started using heel elevation to fit my body anthropometry. If you people don't know, I have a shorter torso and longer femurs. I strictly avoided the orientation patterns. What do I mean by this? You basically start squatting with a neutral stance, and as you go deeper, you externally rotate, which offloads the quads, it biases more adductors and glutes. But what is your prime reason to train squats is to bias more quads and not the glutes or the adductors. To be factual, squatting in a neutral stance with a heel elevation biases more quads, but it also recruits a lot of adductors and glutes, so you're hitting 3 birds with 1 stone. I started doing controlled reps and I completely avoided ego lifting. Do all people need to use heel elevation? Absolutely not. A person with shorter femurs and a bigger, longer torso will be doing a good squat without heel elevation. For people like me with longer femurs, heel elevation does help create a more external rotated position. It is not super external rotation like an orientation pattern, but a good degree of external rotation to move into more internal rotation while you squat down. This cue does help people who are constantly stuck in more externally rotated hip position, and they use a heel elevation and they can start more externally rotated to get more internal rotation. So basically this helps rectify the lack of internal rotation. The body is freaking complex. You cannot just treat your freaking body as a concept of pulleys and levers. There is a lot of nuances to it. I think people who want to dive deep into these PRI concepts should consider studying the ECM model, the expansion compression model. Exercise techniques and exercise selection will be a totally different area of expertise if you want to train a person who is stuck in the left AIC and right BC patterns, and also he might have pec patterns and he might have right TMCC patterns. When it comes to exercise selection for this person, it is more unilateral movements and completely avoiding bilateral movements for few months. Completely stuck in left AIC, right BC. He might have limited shoulder internal rotation when it comes to the left side. He might have limited shoulder external rotation when it comes to the right side. His hips are all tilted in weird positions, and he has to rectify this by using exercise. He has to get optimal ribcage expansion. He has to get his hip orientation back to the normal thing, and he definitely needs to avoid bilateral movements. Kashish Gupta's squatting techniques is so full of shit that he makes no leg gains despite having an expensive freaking gym loaded with the modern equipment. He blames everything on his body anthropometry and his genetics, and he copes by citing a lot of research papers using the science-based jargon, semantics, because he literally doesn't know what he's doing. Yapping about science because you do not understand the biomechanics of exercise. Kashish, you're clearly coping, mate. Too much ego, too much capping, too much yapping, and clearly not open to learn more. These are the signs of a bullshit loaded illiterate freaking coach. I have no freaking clue why people take online coaching from this moron when he is clearly a piece of shit coach. There are too many things to expose when it comes to Kashish Gupta. He has clearly a below average physique. Despite having all the money, all the tools, all the science-based research papers, yet he's coping about his genetics. Being tall is genetic, having a dense freaking beard is genetic, but building a physique is not all genetic because you clearly need to put in the goddamn work. To be a competitive bodybuilder, you definitely need to have the genetics. Ideal body proportions, narrow waist, wider clavicles, ideal muscle bellies, hyper-responder genetics for the drugs, hyper-responder genetics to the weight training, hyper-responder genetics to the nutrition. But if you have skinny calves and skinny forearms like Kashish Gupta, then clearly it is your fault. I hope this message sinks in, and until then, peace out.
देखिए एक तो बेसिक ट्रिक है, एक तो लाइक और शेयर ठोक दीजिए महाकाल का दबा के लाइक और शेयर ठोक लीजिए 5000 लौटे दिख जाना चाहिए। ये 4000 के लिए मैं यहाँ पे नहीं खड़ा हूँ, पूरा साल मेहनत करता हूँ आपके लिए बेटा। ऐसा नहीं चलेगा, ऐसा नहीं चलेगा। लाइक ठोकी दबा के, लाइक ठोकिए। यहाँ पे देखिए ऐसा क्वेश्चन चुटकी बजाते